Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have another very accessible list. This one only requires a handful of Series 3 cards in your Ghost Rider, your Captain Marvel, and your Hela, and it does really well. This can hold up against a lot of the decks that are very common in the meta right now. It can't beat all of their high rolls, but a lot of times it can just find a way to win. You can strategically push or choose what cards to play and discard or hold to make sure that you're finding an efficient use of your tools. And so I like this version better than the Invisible Woman version, because anytime I play Invisible Woman, that is like a target to the opponent. That if they have Cosmo, that is where they're going to want to drop it, especially if I've dropped maybe 1 or 2 resources, or sometimes they use something like a Polaris or an Arrow, and they yank the Hellcow out of that location, and then all of a sudden I discard my Hela and just the whole game plan is shot. But with this list, we have a couple of ways to play. If we don't have Hela in hand at the start, then we typically want to just discard as many cards as we can. Sunspot, of course, takes priority on turn 1 because we will skip and misuse a lot of our energy, so he will typically be able to soak a lot of your missed energy throughout the game. And then after that, even if we discard our Morbius, our discard cards, as long as we have a few good resources to potentially hit, then it's going to be worth playing them early while you don't have Hela. And then if you do have Hela in your hand, your high roll is a little bit lower, but you can find alternative ways to play. You can do a Jubilee to potentially pull into some of your resources. If you're paying attention to what you have left in your deck, you could play your resources like your Sunspot, your Morbius. You could discard 1 card into your Ghost Rider resummon. You could play Captain Marvel naturally onto the board on 5 to act as that rover, and then you can just push your large resource onto the board on that last turn. So the playline flips depending on if you have Hela or not, but overall the deck has a way to find a very consistent way to push power efficiently to win. And so a lot of games that you think you might not have a chance in, it can claw its way out. And this deck is especially good if you're going up against opponents that are running Spider-Man or Sandman or even Storm. Those types of hard to reach locations make Hela shine. You could push power into those, you can lull the opponent into sometimes a false sense of security, and then all of a sudden you're collecting really big cube gains as a result. And so we're gonna go ahead and jump over into a couple of games. I hope that you guys enjoy. All right, first up we have C JoJo, and the first location is Fisk Tower. Now with this version of Hela, it is not so much pushing as much power as you can onto the board, but just a consistent amount of good cards. Typically we want to be able to discard whatever cards we push. So if you have too many discard cards, you start shying away from maybe discarding some of your key resources. However, with this Hela list, if you don't have Hela, typically you can just push your discard cards. If you discard your Swordmaster, that's okay. You don't need all of your cards discarded, but you want to capitalize on the time that you have with Hela not in hand. And then when you do get Hela in hand, you want to push for more of a kind of mid-range path, something with like Jubilee and Odin, and utilize those resources instead. Now they did get the nifty armor lockdown in the collapse mine, and they snapped off of it. That is, it's a good call. It is a lockdown lane. Unless we have a way to buff it with like Patriot, which we don't, there's no reason to do that, then it's just a good, fair play. With Ghost Rider, we could bring back Captain Marvel, but I don't know that we necessarily need to. I want to get as much value out of the cards that we push onto the board as possible. And so they have an Atuma, but we know that they don't have an armor, so if they push another card there, then it will get destroyed. So really, we only need to push 12 power into this lane. And so again, we could use Ghost Rider to resummon our Odin or our Captain Marvel, but instead I'm going to let Sunspot soak some energy here, as long as it is not a like double Spider-Man lockdown. Okay, that the Doc Ock is interesting. So we resummon Hela, that pushes our Captain Marvel, which re-triggers the Odin, but we don't have anything to discard here. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to discard. We were hoping that when Odin re-triggered, that it would force us to discard 1 more card. It would buff up our Morbius a little bit. Here, we're going to gamble a little bit. Do they have a Killmonger? Do they have something that is going to push more power than we can handle into Fisk Tower? Maybe, I don't know, but we're going to stick it out. They did snap on us. They had the cheeky collapse mine lockdown, which is a beautiful play. When it works well, but that means that we can focus our power into the 2 remaining lanes that we have. And so they do eventually think about it, think it through, and we get the retreat. Just a little bit too much power pushed onto the board. Now, if they had had a Shang-Chi, they could have taken us out in Fisk Tower, and they would have gotten the win. So we're going to take that. We will take the 2 cubes where we can get them, and let's jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have POI or POI. The first location is the big house. We're going to be able to tuck our Morbius away in that location. It'll be safe from any kind of Enchantress plays. We can do some double discarding with Sinister London, which is actually not phenomenal for us because we're going to be able to typically get rid of our entire hand anyways. And so it usually gives the opponent more value than it does us, unless we are just naturally playing some of our big resources on the last turn. So like our Infinite, if we discard a card with our Lady Sif, maybe with this one, we try for the old school Lady Sif, Odin, Infinite lane cap in the hub, and then we can just focus on winning the Sinister London lane and the big house lane from there. So the old school Lady Sif combo, Lady Sif used to cost 2, and Ghost Rider used to cost 3. And so you could cap out a lane as early as turn 3 with just some insane power potential. And so we can actually do that here. Just for old time's sake, we're going to go ahead and lock in the Ghost Rider. That will resummon the Odin. Odin will trigger Lady Sif again, which will then re-trigger Ghost Rider, and it will resummon the Infinite. And you used to be able to do this as early as turn 3, or do both pieces on turn 5 without an enabler like Zabu. And so this was really, really busted. And they could, of course, use something like a Shang-Chi, and then you only have 15 power in the lane, but even that is very, very strong. And so I am going to go ahead and put our Captain Marvel onto the board in the flooded lane. Oh no, they have a Galactus, don't they? Shoot. So with the Wolverine, no, it's not a Galactus, or else they would have had to play it this turn. So they have the Yondu, which kills our Hulk. I'm not sure what they're running entirely. It's not a Cerebro 2. I think this is just a hodgepodge deck. So Captain Marvel does at least have us tied in the flooded lane for now. And we're going to be able to discard our remaining cards, which will buff up our Morbius. Captain Marvel can swing over into the big house for the rescue if we need her to. And they do realize that they snapped for some weird reason. I used to love this combo. This is like takes me back to my original days. I used to love the 2-3 combo. And a lot of times I held it until turn 5 to be able to just smash all of these cards onto the board. And then even if you held it until turn 6, if you got a Professor X lockdown beforehand, it was just beautiful. All right, next up we have Legend Reborn. And the first location is the Eternity range. So we're going to push some power to that location. We want to try to not have a rock. We want our Captain Marvel to have as much autonomy to move across the board on the last turn after she's been played or resummoned to find us our win. They play a Korg into the Eternity range, which does shuffle a rock into our deck. We discard our Swordmaster, which is not great. We had a 1 out of 3 shot to discard one of our 6 costs or our discard card, but that is the way that it ended up happening. So they play a Quinjet into the Eternity range as well. So we can actually get a little cheeky here. We can do a Ghost Rider resummon to resummon our lost card in the Swordmaster. That's going to push him, that's going to allow him to discard a card. And then we're looking for our Hela at the end of the game. That also makes sure that they get the rock because we do a pretty decent power push in the lane. For some reason, they skip 1-3. So I'm guessing they don't have a phenomenal hand. I'm going to go ahead and play our Morbius into the Savage Land. We're looking for maybe a turn 5 6 cost drop. Maybe we just play the Hulk naturally into the Superflow. Maybe we use Odin in the Eternity range to discard the Hulk. Oh, so they use Arrow. So they do disrupt our Superflow extra energy, which is okay. But we're going to lean into that. We're going to go with Lady Sif into the Superflow, and we'll see what it discards. Whether it be the Hulk or Odin. We're still hoping to top deck into our Hela here, but we do have a few rocks. We have the rock from Korg, and then we have 3 other cards. Jubilee is a Hail Mary. Do we go with a Hail Mary? They skipped on 5, so they could have an Infinite. But if that's the case, or they could have a She-Hulk and then some additional resources. They would have to swing quite a few of these locations. I'm gonna go with the Hulk. We're gonna go with good, consistent, not rock value. Since we have a rock in the deck, that makes me very nervous to go with a Jubilee pool. And even if it was a 1 out of 3, it's still iffy. Because in our deck, we still have the Sunspot. We have Captain Marvel, we have Hela, and a rock. So we have 2 good pulls, 2 bad pulls. And we do end up getting the retreat. I'm guessing they had a bad draw. All right, next up we have Greyfield, and in our starting hand we have one discard resource or card, and we don't have Hela yet, which is good. We want to try to discard as many cards as possible before we draw into Hela. We do get Jubilee that we could drop on 4 if we want to gamble a little bit, but we do have some of our really big resources already out on the board, and so I don't know that we take that gamble. We are going to play Swordmaster. Really, whatever gets discarded is okay. A Hulk, Odin, or Captain Marvel is definitely more ideal than the Jubilee or the Sunspot, but either one of those other two would be, I guess, okay. Sunspot would be the worst of them. And so they play a Debris, which floods our board a little bit. We do draw into Hela, so I think we're going to do a Sunspot on 4. We're going to let him soak some energy. On 5, we can do Captain Marvel. That can act as a way to buff up the kiln lane if we need more resources there. And then we also have Hela, which will resummon our Hulk, which is still a 18 power turn 6 play, which is still phenomenal. It's not a 56 power resummon, but it is a very strong resummon nonetheless. So they do push quite a bit of power into the kiln location. We can actually cut the chances of where Hulk resummons. Instead of it being a 33% chance of each lane, we can cut it down by capping out Los Diablos space here. So hopefully they don't do a Spider-Man. Oh, Spider-Man in the Ruins would have ruined us. We're going to go ahead and do the Hela resummon. Captain Marvel can move over here to bump them up a little bit, or if our Hulk pushes here, Captain Marvel can always move over into this far right lane to act as a power push for us as well. And we do get another retreat. I want to see Hela trigger, but it is a very transparent play line or deck. And so a lot of times you will get people that will retreat more often than a surprising last turn play. But where this deck list shines is the consistency and being able to push a pretty good amount of power into hard to reach locations, especially if you're running into Spider-Man a lot. This can do wonders for you. All right, next up we have Tankster. And this is one of those games where we do have Hela in our starting hand. So unlike the Invisible Woman version, we typically don't really like to have Hela in our opening hand because it makes it a lot harder to just dump our resources onto the board and then resummon them later. We have to be a little bit more strategic about what cards we play and where. So we actually discard our Swordmaster, which is not bad because we will be able to resummon him at some point. We could go with the 50-50 discard chance from Lady Sif, but I think I'm just going to play Morbius onto the... Actually, we could have kept him in hand. There was really no reason to play him. If he gets discarded, that counts towards our discarded cards, and then when he resummons back, he'll be bigger. And it kind of gives away our play line a little bit. But we're going to play Sunspot. We're going to let him soak some energy up, and then we will kind of go from there. Now, the good thing about Odin in this list is he can potentially hit your Hela to re-trigger it after a card like, I don't know, Swordmaster gets resummoned and discards additional resources for you. We are going to play our Captain Marvel into the Xandar location. We're going to naturally play it onto the board, and then we will just play our Hela on the last turn, which is not a phenomenal power push. It's a very mid-range, mid-power spike, but we have the Captain Marvel that can rove across the board, and maybe, just maybe, we can get lucky enough to find a win. We could do Jubilee and Blade, which would be a decent power push. We have some really good resources left in our deck. We have our Infinite, our Hulk, and our Ghost Rider, actually. So all of those are going to be at least at a minimum of 9 power and a maximum of 20. No, I think we're going to do that instead. That's a better power push overall by paying attention to what we had left in our deck. So we are going to go, we're going to go digging here. They did use their Jane Foster. They probably have a Wasp. So they do spread their power out across the board. Let's see if the Infinite comes down. The Blade in the mid, I don't think that is enough. But with the help of our Captain Marvel, she moves over, forces us into a tie in the Collapse Mine, and we are able to overcome the lower mid-range power push that Tankster has from what I assume is a Jane Foster Lockjaw deck. And so Hela decks have a way of doing that, of being able to find ways to push power in sometimes surprising ways. So that game, we only discarded 1 card, but by paying attention to what we had left in our deck, what we had discarded, we were able to make a decision of what the best play line to go with was going to be. And so with that one, we are going to go ahead and end the video here. I know we got a lot of retreats, a lot of mid-range games, but with a deck that the opponent knows what you're running, a lot of times you are going to see more retreats, but that doesn't make it any less consistent. So I played a total of 7 games and I got 5 wins from it. And that is pretty consistent with what I have found for Hela in the most part, is that as long as your opponent doesn't get an incredibly high roll, you can compete with most decks in most situations. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. And as always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.